And just think about how many men wouldn't allow themselves to have this level of awareness because they have attached the idea of leading with your feminine to not being a man. And so this has allowed you to be more successful, right? Because you like what you're doing.
Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help Black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as Black men and as a Black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode.
All right, y'all. I'm here with Ekene. She's the founder of the Iconic Womanhood community and a feminine leadership coach. How are you doing?
I'm doing really great. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. Listen, this is an episode I've been very, very excited to get into. And the reason why is because I feel like we had such a very good conversation, like a precursor. So a lot of people don't know that I do a precursor before the episodes. Like we sit down and we talk and then we come up with the flow. But like our conversation, like coming up with the flow for the episode was really, really good. So we're gonna dive into a lot of good stuff. So let's just get straight into it.
Yeah.
And the first thing that we were talking about, and the reason why we wanted to have this episode is because we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, right? This is a term that's been thrown around a lot on social media. And a lot of people don't really know what it means, right? So can you tell us what that is to you? What is masculine and feminine energy?
Yeah, so masculine power is a framework, right? And it's one of the tools that we use to help understand ourselves better. And it's both based in science and in cultural anthropology, so to speak, right? So you'll see the idea of masculine and feminine energy across various cultures, like in the Asians, yin and yang, in India, Shakti and Shiva. But you'll also see it in science with the concept of the right-brained person and the left-brained person. So a lot of the traits that we assign to the feminine are what we would consider right-brained, right? Creativity, intuition, some of those things, right? And then a lot of the traits that we would consider masculine energy traits, we would consider as left brains and breath brains. So those are the very logical, cognitive intelligence. And one of the ways that I like to kind of look at it is masculine energy is strong and solid, right? Kind of like a boulder, where feminine energy is more like flow, like a river, like water, right? You need both. And I like the right brain, left brain when I teach it, and I kind of help people understand that because people have now really connected it to feminine and masculine affectations, which is they're not exactly the same thing. Because a man can have feminine energy and lead from his feminine and still be a very masculine man, right? Because he's a man with masculine affectations, but he leads with feminine energy. And a woman can have very feminine affectations, but still be a woman who is left-brained and leads with masculine energy. So affectations are what we have come to assert, like femininity is more of an affectation, right? Now, the truth is, what we suppose is that a lot of women naturally tend to lead with feminine. And a lot of men naturally tend to lead with masculine energy, which is why we tend to attribute masculine energy to masculinity and feminine energy to femininity. But it is important not to conflate the two because there is a slight difference. And it's important that we begin to understand that so that we can really authentically be ourselves. So if you're a woman who leads with your masculine, it doesn't mean that you're masculine and trying to be a man and you don't know how to be a woman. It's not actually true. And what that causes people to do is not really embrace themselves. And if you're a man who leads with your feminine, it doesn't make you any less of a man or any less manly, right? And so it's important that we understand that so that we can really delve into who we are created to be and live these whole, purposeful, soulful lives.
I think you broke that down beautifully. I definitely understood it. The only part that I'm like, okay, can we break this down a little bit more? You talked about affectations. What is that specifically? How would that show in a person? So like a woman having feminine affectations? Well, how would that show for someone that's just looking at her for maybe the first time or knows her?
Well, in the next 10, 20, 30 years, this may change because the world is changing. When I was in my 20s, the word metrosexual didn't exist, right? But that is an example of this blending of affectation, so to speak. So, like I'm a woman who has a lot of feminine affectations. The way I speak, the way I move my hands, the way I like to look. I'll wear a dress first. Those are things that there's just that way of being that is associated with being very feminine, very frilly, softer in our way, right?
Right. Okay.
Masculine is more, the hard lines, right? The way he would show up, he's more direct in his language, perhaps, where the feminine might be more flowery, even the way we take up space. So a man would, just kind of solid, walk in, chest out, where a woman might be, just a little bit more just reserved in her way. And those are affectations. And I like the word affectations because we learn, it's an affect. Many of us learn that way of being by the people we're around, and we can unlearn it if it isn't working for us, right? So that's why sometimes you're beginning to see people shift.
Yeah, something interesting that you said, you talked about men being masculine men and having masculine affectations, but leading with feminine energy. And we were talking about how I don't really like masculine energy too much, right? Because masculine energy is very restrictive to me. And in what I do, there has to be a lot of creative flow. I create a lot of content. I do a lot of branding. I do a lot of building of things, right? Of products. There's not a lot of, like, masculine energy goes into the back end, but the front end and what people see is a lot more feminine.
Yes.
Right. And people don't even realize that Express Yourself Black Man really is more of a feminine, like, energetic brand or business or platform than it is masculine. Right. It has the masculine affectations because it has me as a man that's leading it.
That's
but
right.
I'm leading in my femininity by leading with vulnerability.
That's right. Vulnerability, creativity, right?
That as well.
Sensitivity. Those are the, intuition, that feeling part. Even the way we had our conversation, right, where you weren't rigid, you're saying, okay, you know what, I normally do this amount of time. I think we might do this much time. That allowing that, being open, that flexibility is in the feminine, where a masculine, someone who was leading in masculine energy might be like, well, this is exactly what it's going to look like. And, you better fit into this box, right? So, and that's not a negative thing, right? Because you need both. When I teach women, because I teach feminine leadership, a lot of women are naturally in their feminine. But like you said, for it to be a business, you have to have that masculine part. You need some structure in order to harness the flow. And masculine is structure, is direction. It's being very logical, looking at those numbers, right? So you're looking at your analytics. You're looking, am I hitting my targets? That's that masculine energy. So we need to integrate. So while you love to be more in your feminine, as far as energy, right, you are undergirded with your masculine. Otherwise, you wouldn't be successful.
Right. Yeah. And that's absolutely right. And that's the reason why I know I like to operate more in my feminine. Because when I do the masculine tasks, I'm like, bruh, I wish I could have somebody else do this. You know what I'm saying? Like answering the emails and scheduling the podcast episodes and scheduling tasks for my editor and uploading stuff. All of those things take me a long time versus making content. I can do it quickly. Like I can do it right on the spot and I'll do it easily because I like doing that. And that's operating in my feminine. So that's why I knew, I was like, okay, I like operating my creativity. And that's more free flowing for me. It's not as rigid and doesn't seem as structured. And that's the reason why I knew, I was like, okay, I like leading with that femininity, especially in the business. Like that's what's more fun for me.
Yeah. And just think about how many men wouldn't allow themselves to have this level of awareness because they have attached the idea of leading with your feminine to not being a man. And so this has allowed you to be more successful, right? Because you like what you're doing and you're showing up in that joy state, which attracts more success to you.
Right. Yeah. And it's so interesting. You're so right about men not being comfortable saying that. Like A lot of times when I express myself and like I'm comfortable in my expression, I get a lot of people like, wow, thank you so much for sharing. And like I'm almost always taken aback because I'm like, yo, like I'm not sharing like I didn't just tell you like nuclear launch codes or anything like that. I just told you I was depressed in 2017 and now I started. But it's such a shock for people because they're not used to men being comfortable with that level of vulnerability, right? And so it really just goes to show like the point that we're at in like this in our generation or just in our times where there's a lot of men that just aren't comfortable expressing themselves. And I think that has to do with not leaning into that feminine enough, right? And on top of a lot of other things, right? But it's also not leading into that feminine and being scared of feminine and feminine energy.
100%, 100%. I that's how I found you. And I thought, oh, this is remarkable because it isn't common, like you said, right? And I'm so excited when I see men leaning into it and leading, because this is a leadership, right? Because you're leading by being,
right?
And being fully yourself too, because by you standing and being in your masculine affectation, right? In your, I'm not going to put you on the spot. When I was reading your email, I was like, oh, there's that masculine right there. Like, I'm gonna wait 10 minutes. Okay. Right.
Oh,
yeah. So I said, okay. But there was that. I was like, okay, respect that. Fair enough, right? But by you being fully embracing all parts of you, it really gives so many people permission to really be able to embrace themselves, particularly. And I have a heart for women. I'm called to serve and coach women, but I have a deep heart for men because I feel like there's such a lack of support right now in doing this work, in being able to hold space for the fullness of who our men are. And so when I see a man like you modeling, I think it's, exceptional. So kudos to you for just being yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it is, man. Like I'm comfortable with who I am. And I think a lot of men struggle with that. Like we fight against who we know ourselves to be because of what society tells us we need to be.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, man, just be yourself, bro. Like it's okay if everybody doesn't accept you. Like that's all right. That's part of growth. Right. And I had to get comfortable with it. And I get comfortable with it all the time on the page as well, because there are going to be times where I make stuff or like I make a post or I say a certain thing a certain way and people are uncomfortable with the way that I'm expressing, because sometimes I do speak from the masculine, right? Like when things come out, I don't always speak with nurturing and feminine energy. And then it comes out and people feel that and they're like, man, I don't really like your tone in this. It's because I'm speaking with masculine. I'm being a much more direct. I'm holding somebody accountable. And then I get comments like, yo, bro, I don't really like your tone. It's very abrasive and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I see, right? Like I understand. I'm not going to really change anything about that, but I understand why you're saying that, because you're not used to me operating in the masculine. You've come here because it's been leading in feminine energy. And now that I switch to the masculine when I'm speaking, it doesn't come off well to you.
It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it may hit up against a wound, right? And you're uncomfortable. So many people have had, unfortunately, we have men and women. I think there are a lot of wounded. So many of us are wounded, like walking wounded right now. And so you might have had some past history with men that make you feel uncomfortable, right? And so you feel unsafe when you see someone operating in the masculine, because your experience with masculine maybe has been with wounded masculine. And so you're like, wait a minute, this feels like masculine energy. And my experience with it hasn't been great, because the men I've come into contact with that are leading with masculine have led with wounded masculine. And they're women and they're men, I think, as well, who, and you're seeing it now, we kind of talked about it a bit, but I see right now this polarity, like this very polarized conversations that really come from a place of bitterness, where you're hearing men talk about women a certain way, particularly in the Black community, and you're hearing women talk about men a certain way. And I think it's two different people who are used to dealing with people who are in wounded states and are in wounded states themselves. So when you see that woman, you're like, here, they're going to take advantage of me. They're going to be this, they're going to be that. You see that man, the same thing, right? So when people come to you, they're coming, okay, he's a man who's in his feminine, but you have to, again, it's an integration. All of us have both. And the reality of life is you need both, and both will show up at different times. Like I'm a woman who leads with my feminine, but I'm also a mom. If you try my kid, you will see that masculine come out real quick. If I feel unsafe, if I'm walking down a dark street, I am not in my feminine. I'm very much in my masculine. If you have a conversation with me, come up on me, you will discover that I'm in that protective energy. And so all those affectations fly out the window. I will be in masculine affectations real quick because you want to protect yourself. When I'm dealing with my money or dealing with my business, I have to be structured. And so you allow yourself to kind of be in the energy you need. And that's one of the things that is important to me around teaching, that is really about integration and wholeness versus saying, I need to leave one part of myself behind. You may have a more dominant, or it may be more of who you are, right? But you are going to be undergirded by the other. So if you lead with masculine, you need to be undergirded by the feminine. If you lead with feminine, you need to be undergirded by the masculine, because you need both.
Absolutely. I love the way you broke that down with the walking down the alley example, because that's really what it is. You can't walk down the alley as a woman and just not be aware of your surroundings. There's so many different dangers, especially to women in society, right? Like you have to at least have some masculine there to protect you, right? And that's some masculine energy to protect you. So I love the way that you broke that down. You were talking about something earlier that I definitely want to get into is the wounded masculine, the wounded feminine. Can you please tell people what that actually is? Because we got into it a little bit, but I want you to break it down for people, please.
Yeah, so I believe that we get wounded a number of different ways. And so if you lead with masculine and you lead with feminine, if you're wounded, you'll start to manifest wounded masculine or wounded feminine, right? So the woundedness is a state of being, right? And we can become wounded in a number of different ways, trauma and whatnot. So therapists, I know you have a lot of therapists on, talk about different types of trauma that cause us to be in a wounded state. And so many of us, particularly in the Black community, because, and this is across the diaspora. So for me, I'm a Nigerian American, right? I was born in the States, raised in Nigeria. So I have an understanding of, history as far as slavery goes, but also our history as far as colonization, and both are dehumanizing, right? And we are living in a world that causes us an amount of trauma in various ways. And we are also people who have just learned how to keep it moving across the board. We just keep things moving. So we end up really being people who are really walking wounded. We learn how to be unhealed and how to just keep moving unhealed. So we are suppressing, some repression sometimes, escapism. These are things that we're doing, that we have the wound, but we're learning how to move with the wound, right? And so we've created this lifestyle that is trauma informed, but we don't really realize it. And so a masculine, someone who's leading with their masculine, when they are showing up in wounded masculine, they, instead of being that protector, strong, disciplined, structured person, they can then come out and be aggressive and controlling. So that structure becomes control, competitive, dominating, and very emotionally closed off, because again, that feminine is gone, right? So there's that abuse of, they're just abusing their power. Sometimes I think there's that hypersexuality, right, that can show up in that wounded masculine because it's kind of escaping. And then someone who's in the wounded feminine, right? She's in that place where she's in victim mode. Because it's like everything to the other side, right? You're in victim mode, you're withholding, you're shut down in a way, right? It's not an authentic expression of your emotions. It's just maybe using emotions in a way to create what you want, right? In a way to, being oversensitive or out of control, like that drama queen, being very needy, feeling like, have you ever been with somebody, you're trying to tell them, they're telling you there's a problem and you're trying to offer a solution and they're like, that won't work. They offer another solution. That won't work. It'll never work. Oh my God, I'm just going to be in this state forever. They're stuck in that victim mindset, and they feel very disempowered. That's a way wounded feminine shows up. And this is because, we get into it either one of the ways is this whole trauma that we're all dealing with, various kinds of trauma, but also being out of balance for so long. We talked about this dark alley and how so many of us, I talk to women all day long because I work with women. A lot of women are naturally leading with their feminine, but they're stuck in their masculine because they have to protect themselves, and they are the providers. And it's not so much that making money is the thing, it's that when you have the stress of being the only person, that the buck stops with you as far as money, it's a fear, it can be, it's just overarching, and it pushes you right into your masculine. If you don't feel safe, it pushes you in your masculine. So let's say you've been dealing with someone who's in wounded masculine, for example, right? And he's coming at you, or you're dealing with a toxic organization maybe, right? And you're constantly questioned, you're constantly on your toes, you're hyper aware because, people, there's all this political intrigue, corporate politics. You're going to be in your masculine because you can't rest, right? So the masculine is a protector, is that energy. So you can't really be in flow. You have to be like God, you have your guard up, right? And so when you're constantly in that state, just imagine how you feel when you've been in that masculine. You're drained, you're exhausted. And so even when you want to manifest in your feminine, you're operating from a place of depletion. And you haven't healed. And we have these, I feel like they're myths that we believe, both men and women, particularly in our cultures, right? We have these myths that cut across. Like one of the myths is that life is hard, I have to be harder, right? Another myth is I can't be my authentic self because I won't be accepted. And then the final myth is I'm not enough. I have to achieve in order to be worthy. I have to have more and more and more in order to be worthy. And when men and women, we both have these myths, right? It drains us. We can't stop. You can't stop to heal. You know that something is wrong, but you can't stop to deal with it. You know that you're overwhelmed, but you can't stop. You need to even grieve. I mean, I've had a personal experience with grief this year. And even I'm talking about this with you, and I'm just going to be really transparent. I'm talking about it with you, but I am learning like, okay, I'm struggling to find time and to give myself the room I need to grieve. And so I feel as if my grief is truncated, and I keep having to, I work with my therapist and we're talking things through, and I'm doing other healing modalities to help myself unpack my grief and heal, because I don't want to suppress it, because so many of us, we suppress it or we escape it, right? And then it comes out in all these other ways and shows up in that wounded masculine or feminine.
Man, first of all, I want to thank you for your vulnerability and talking about your grief, because that's something that I think is important for us to talk about, especially in our community. Like, we go through grief and then we don't know the process, or like we don't give ourselves enough time to go through the actual process of grieving, because a lot of us are either scared or we don't know what to do, right? Like, it's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So I think a lot of people will relate to you talking about it, and hopefully get some kind of insight into how they can deal with their own. For me personally, like, I love the fact that you talked about masculine energy and how women can kind of get pushed into masculine energy when they have to be basically the breadwinner with no support.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it, it reminds me of a clip that I put up the other day when I was talking to men about providing, right? And what I was saying essentially was, it's a good thing to have a woman that's ambitious and that can help you, right? Because what we don't realize is that we make ourselves a single point of failure when we're the only person bringing in income. Not only is that bad for our family, but it's bad for us for the same reason that you just mentioned. It's bad for women. It's stressful. You have to always operate in your masculine. I don't care how masculine of a man you are. Masculine energy, and let me just talk for me personally. Mm-hmm. Masculine energy is very draining for me. Okay. It is very draining. I work a 9 to 5. I have to answer emails. I have to coordinate with people. I have to make sure products are running the right way. I have to talk to customers. I'm using masculine energy 9 to 5. It is very draining. When I get off of work, I don't want to be in masculine energy, right? You know, like I want to be able to operate in that feminine, because that for me is like, okay, it's free flowing. I get to recharge. I get to chill. I get to relax. Most men, I think, don't realize that the reason why they're so unhappy and sad and like depressed and anxious and all these different things is because they are always operating in masculine to put up this facade for society. I'm this masculine man. I got it all together. When it's like, yo, bro, it's okay. You can let it go. Because we have this thing in our society where it's like, if you're not operating as a quote unquote masculine man, what society determines masculine to be, you lose your man card. It's kind of like how, you know, people take away your black card, right? If they see you doing a certain thing that isn't deemed masculine, it's like, hey, yo, bro, you wildin'. Nah, you shouldn't be doing that. And then it's like, all right, cool. I gotta assimilate to what people want me to do. So not only am I depleted in my masculine energy, but I have to keep operating in it to put up this facade for society. And I'm just like, yo, bro, I ain't doing that. I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good. I'm gonna lead with my vulnerability. I'm gonna talk about what's bothering me. I'm gonna express it. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna do my self-care. I'm gonna take myself out on dates. I'm gonna take baths. I'm gonna light my candles. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not about to sit here and let y'all stress me out and kill me.
Yeah, shorten your lifespan. Real talk.
Exactly. Shorten my lifespan to put up a facade for people that I don't even really care about y'all opinions.
You know, I'm so glad you're saying this, because this is a real conversation. Because even for women, I think I can actually hear, it's like I can hear it like in the air. Someone saying, well, I don't want my man needs to be a man, right? I don't want him to come back and
talk to him.
I'm tired of being the man in the relationship. I want him to be the man, right? And I get that, but I think that's where we have to release these very rigid ideas, because we have this idea that a man that says, okay, I've been in it all day, and if he comes back and he says, I just need not to be in it, even if it's for an hour to recharge, right? That takes away his manhood. Or if he says, hey, babe, I'm scared. Like I'm not sure what we're going to do right now. I'm a little scared. But that is, maybe that admission is all he needs to access the creativity needed to find a new solution to the problem. But because we can't allow for that, because that's like, you know, I need my man to be a man. And the man is like, I'm a man's man. I got it. The other thing, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a woman of faith.
Yeah, please.
And for me, as a woman of faith, it is huge. It's what allows me to be, because for me, I'm a woman, I'm a single woman, right? So for me in my home, I'm managing my finances, but because of my faith, that allows me to be in my feminine. Because I don't believe the buck stops with me. I believe that I have a God, the divine. So there is a provider, right? And I meet men, and this is the other thing too, a man of faith, that also, if he's in his masculine, sometimes if you're especially in your wounded masculine, and that feminine is in there, because one of the feminine energy traits is receptivity, the ability to receive.
Talk about it, please.
Because if you can't receive, think about it. If you can't receive blessings, you can't receive gifts. There are a lot of women who don't know how to receive. I was one of those women before. Let me tell you a story, an example of this receptivity, then we'll bring it back to faith.
Yeah.
I was on a trip. This is after I've done my work, and I'm feminine leadership coach, and I'm in my feminine. But I was on a trip with a young woman, brilliant, beautiful, strong woman. And there's nothing wrong with being strong, by the way, but you don't have to be strong and be hard. You can be strong like silk, be soft. We'll talk about that. But we were on a trip together. We were on a business trip, and we were at the airport, the carousel where your luggage is coming.
Yeah.
And my luggage was coming, her luggage was coming. And so a man was near us, a gentleman, because not all men are gentlemen. A gentleman was near us and he saw that she was kind of reaching for her bag. And he starts to reach to it for her. He's like, oh, let me get that for you. And she's like, oh no, I got it. Thank you. I got it. She wasn't offended. She didn't even realize she did it. She just said, oh no, I got it. And she reached and she got it. And he backed up like, okay. Then we go to the car and again, the driver comes out of the car and is saying, oh, he's reaching for her bag again. And she's like, oh, thank you, I got it. And then we're driving. And now she had just finished telling me on the plane ride how she's single. Mm-hmm. And she's wanting to, and she's not attracting the kind of men that she desires. And where are all the good men? And where are all the men that, men these days? But what I saw was a woman who didn't know how to receive. So even when he's wanting to give you, you can't receive because you have learned, I got it, right? And so many of us do that. Now, if even our men do that, because that's very masculine energy, I got it. So man, I got it under control. But back to the divine, back to God. There are some things, and we have to, and for us as a people, Black people across the diaspora, we are all spiritual people. If you look at our history, we're spiritual people. And I truly believe that that is the source of our strength, because for us to still be here, considering all that we've gone through across the diaspora, we have a greater source of strength that is bigger than us. And so for me as a woman of faith, drawing from that and being able to receive. So I'm very happy to come to the end of myself and say, Holy Spirit, okay, I'm at the end of myself. I am ready to receive. Give me what I need. And when I look for a man that will be a man that I can walk with as a partner, I actually want a leader, right? But a man who can be led by God is important to me. That means he can receive. He's not saying, I got it all in my own strength. I need you to be able to say, well, I've come to the end of myself, Holy Spirit, I receive. And that's necessary. So again, there's that, we have to be both. We have to be integrated and we have to give ourselves permission to show up as we need to show up.
There's nothing more that needs to be said. Oh my God, you really just broke that down beautifully. Honestly, being able to receive. When I talk about leadership on the page, right? I have this post, Black man, here's how you lead in a relationship. The very first thing that I put there is listen. And the reason why I'm putting listen is because you can't lead by dictating right away. How are you going to lead if you don't know what you're leading? Okay. You get what I'm saying? And the reason, and I remember when I first put it up, I would get feedback from men, and like I know there's certain men that would have certain issues with me saying listen first, right? And what I'm realizing after having this conversation with you is listen to them comes off as feminine. And it may be a feminine trait, but it's also being able to receive what people are saying to you.
That's right. That's right.
You need to be able to receive the messages. Not only receive them, you need to be able to comprehend them, which then puts you back into their masculine.
That's right.
Okay.
Analyze.
Yes, analyze. And if you're missing the listen, which is the more feminine aspect of that, you won't be able to ever lead effectively in your household. Yeah. So this is one of the big reasons why I think accessing our feminine energy and using it as a strength, which it is, and in the proper scenarios is important for us. Everybody wants to lead their household appropriately, but doesn't know that their feminine energy is the key to that.
That's right. So much of it. In fact, one of the feminine energy traits is nurturing. A lot of people, when they think about nurturing, they think automatically mothering. Mothering is a kind of nurturing, but it is not just what nurturing is. I want you to think about a farmer who plants a seed in the ground, right? And comes and weeds and cultivates that soil and keeps nurturing that seed till it becomes a plant, until it bears fruit. And when you think about the term husband, one of the things that I've always said, that I've seen more and more now, but I came across for me, was a very real understanding, because many men learn how to court, but don't learn how to be husbands, because the idea is that just because you get married, you're a husband, but not every man that's married is a husband, just like not every woman that's married is a wife. Husbanding, if you look at the term husbandry, it's an agricultural term, and it really has to do with cultivating and nurturing. And so there has to be that ability to say, this is the family that I desire. And as I get married, it is like a seed, and I'm going to cultivate it. I'm going to pull out the weeds. I'm going to take care of the soil, till the soil. I'm going to do what it takes to bring the fruit out of this marriage. Because as the husband, that's my leadership role. And it is necessary for me to do, as you said, to lean into some of my feminine pieces, the listening, the being able to understand, the sensitivity, right? That tenderness, because if you treat a plant rough, you'll break the plant. When you're nurturing a plant, when you're nurturing a baby animal in the you can't just be rough. You have to have some tenderness about you, right? You have to pay attention to the data that you're receiving in order to make the right decision. So yeah, absolutely. It is key in order to be the best leader of a family.
Man, I'm having so much fun on this episode. I just want to say that I am learning so much, and this is so like edifying, man. So I want to ask you, what are you're a feminine leadership coach? I think that's very, very interesting, because you work with a lot of women, and I always like asking women that work with women, what are the issues that you see with the women that you coach? Like, what are your main issues that you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it I've highlighted already, right? Because so many women, you're forced to be the breadwinner, or you're running a business, or you're a boss, right? And the way the world has taught us to pursue success is a very masculine path, right? You set a goal, and your SMART goals, and you get that to-do list out, and you're just running and you're pushing. And so one of the biggest reasons women come to me, whether they are single or they're married, is because they are drained. They're successful, but they're at the point where they're saying there has to be another way to live, right? In fact, I call it soullessness. You've entered into soulless success, and that's who I am. I'm not going to say forgive me. That's who I am, a little closet pastor, so I'm going to drop a scripture. One of my favorite scriptures is, I desire that you prosper even as your soul prospers, which tells us that there's a way to prosper without your soul prospering. Right. And so a lot of the women that I meet, they have gotten a kind of prosperity that they feel as if they're losing their souls. Something is shifting in them. They've lost the essence of who they are as women, which is why they're attracted to the idea of iconic womanhood that speaks to them, because there's still a prestige and a premium with the iconic, which they are powerful women, and they want to continue to be powerful. They want to continue to be impactful, and they are ambitious women. By the way, I reposted that clip that you said earlier on. I was like, you see, single point failure. I love that. I'd never heard that term before. I was like, you see, that's that masculine language that is helping us understand this. But back to what we're saying, they come because they also are at that point where it's that single point failure, right? They're carrying it all alone. Some of them are married, some are not, and they're just exhausted. They're drained. They feel like there has to be another way. And many people have been waiting for the solution to come from outside of them. Like, if I can just find the right man, if my man can just be different, then somehow my life will be different, and I will be able to finally be in my, I don't know what it is, but I'll be better, right? But the solution is never outside of you. It's always inside of you, and it flows out. Everything comes from the overflow, but the overflow comes from within you. And so being able to start to do that work. And I tell you, I've gotten letters from husbands. I have quite a few letters from husbands. It always thrills me when I meet a husband and he's like, oh, you're Ekene. How are you? Thank you. Can I give you a hug? Like, I'm telling you, this happened to me. I've gotten beautiful letters from husbands because they didn't have the language for what was going on. Right? They didn't know what was going on. They loved their wives loved them. They have a loving home. However, things were happening. For example, he goes out, he's dealing with the stress of the world, and we're living in a world that negates Black men. right? That you're fighting, you're dealing with a lot of stress. You go out there into the world, you never know what you're going to come across, but it's also happening to Black women. And so both of you go out, and guess what? You're both in masculine, right? Because you're dealing with the stress of the world. And then you come back home, and instead of then coming home and taking off all of that and making your home your sanctuary, we don't know that we're doing this. You come in with the energy from the outside. And so masculine meets masculine. And that's the idea of be my peace, be my peace. That's very stressful because you're looking again for the solution to be outside of you. The solution is on the inside. It's our responsibility to first create peace within ourselves, and then that peace overflows. So we come home and we're both in masculine, and we keep repelling. And what masculine does when it meets another masculine, it attempts to dominate, right?
Yeah.
Or it withdraws.
Oh my God.
So that's that guy that's on his like game thing. He's not talking to like whatever. He's zoned out. He doesn't want to talk. He's withdrawn. Or he's like, what you're not going to do. It's like loggerheads over, can you pass me the remote? Because there's that fight, like two alpha dogs fighting, right? That's what tends to happen. But I had a client once, and this was happening, and they had a beautiful marriage. They loved each other. When I say beautiful, I mean the foundation was love. Sometimes that's not the foundation. There were no deal breakers, but they just kept having challenges as her business grew. And this is what we don't actually plan for, especially now where we're having this whole push for, secure the bag, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8, and you keep going. A lot of people don't even know what enough looks like. So they keep chasing the next bag. And there's no discussion on what that does to the feminine soul. When I work with women, I'm like, we need to plan for this. If you're going to the next level, right, you need to understand the next level of stress that comes with that and plan for that and have a strategy to address that. So as her business was growing and as she was rising, right, there's a next level of stress. So where she was initially, she was okay, right? But she's at that next level of stress. Now her husband is older, he's successful, but older, and he's now in the sunset of his life. So he's now settling down a little bit more. So there's a tiny little bit of fear because he's no longer in the highest earning stages of his life. Even though he has investments, he's no longer actively earning the way she was used to him actively earning. Her business is rising, which was actually I believe is often God's design to make sure that you guys are good, but she wasn't prepared for the stress level. So she's coming into masculine and then boom, boom, boom. And so one of the simple things we did, and it's going to sound kind of simple and ridiculous to some of your listeners, but honestly, just like you said, I'm going to come home and light my candles. One of the things was when you come home, let's start this. 1, remember positive regard. Right? No matter what, remember, this is the man you love and he loves you. Come in with that mindset. When you come into that house, don't immediately run into the managing of the house, which most people do. Come into the house, greet him, let him greet you, right? One of the things I told her, and initially she was like, I said, well, when you come home, instead of just running in, say, hey, babe, I've had a long day. Can you just hold me for a bit? And she's like, I'm not doing that. I was like, well, I mean, you're the one that hired me. Do you want to try it? And she did. And he was so taken aback. But here's the thing. She just allowed herself to be held. Do you know how few women are actually held? Like held, not sexually held that is going to lead to something else, just held and supported and loved. And immediately that brought her into a place of, I have someone to hold me. I have someone to hold me. I can rest in him. And then we talked about shifting out of the work clothes, going in and putting on having that bath and the robe, she put on some nice, feminine kaftan type, whatever it is, right? Come down, and she shifted. And you'll see, if you look back into the old movies and stuff, you'll see a lot of women, they take their hair down, little things like that when they come home that are into their body, because your body speaks to your mind speaks to your body. So that body shift does something on the inside. Oh, okay, I'm in a different space here. I'm a different person here. I don't have to do that, right? I'm different. Because for me, I used to be a pharmacist before I did this work. So I used to wear a white coat. The biggest mistake would be to come home from work where I would be like, and I would have my white coat on and I would walk around the house in my white coat. Big mistake. I didn't know better. Now I do, right? So you come home immediately and you shift your energy.
Oh my God, man. People don't, yeah. Listen, if you're having issues at home, you don't know what's going on, you feel like it's not a sanctuary. I think one of the big takeaways is look within. But I think also that exercise that you talked about is really good.
Yeah.
About resetting when you get home. Because
Yeah.
we're like, as Black people, we're, like you said, we're going through so much when we leave. Even if we don't leave, like even going into remote work, I'm going through a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, and my culture and my environment is pretty much healthy, but I still have a lot of stuff that I need to do that puts me in a lot of masculine. I need to reset after I get off of work.
That's right.
Wow, man. So there was another thing we were talking about. We were talking about Black couples and or just Black relationships. Why do we see like a fight for power?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some of that, what we just talked about, that we're in trauma. We're dealing with a lot of trauma. So a lot of us are in fight or flight energy all the time. But then also, there's this sort of trust and there's a brokenness that's historic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we carry that and we have a fear. We bring so much fear into what we're doing. We bring so much, we're not sure that we will be accepted. Is back to that thing about exceptions, right? So I can't be vulnerable. I can't allow myself to really be who I want to be in this relationship. Because if I truly rest, I'll be hurt. Because my mother was hurt, my mother's mother was hurt, my father was hurt, my father's father was hurt. So we come into the relationship with so many different energies and fear, right? And then it's made worse by a lot of the gurus of the day who are capitalizing on this fear, right? Because it's this messaging that if you don't control and dominate, then you will be controlled. It's interesting. I remember when I was in my 20s, right? I'm quite far from that now. But when I was in my 20s, I remember I was in Nigeria. I was in a Nigerian culture. I was here in the US by then, but I had mostly Nigerian friends and we would laugh and talk. And I remember someone saying, an auntie coming over and kind of having an auntie conversation with us. And she said, I don't know how to say it. The translation would be, with men, you have to really hold them tight. You have to control them, because if you don't control them, they'll grind you like beans, right? Because we have a meal that we make, moi moi, which is ground beans. Akwagika moi moi, that's what she would say. Like they grind you up and they'll make you into moi moi. And basically you'll lose all essence of yourself. So it's basically control or be controlled. And I want you to think about the fact that for so many of us, we haven't unpacked the trauma, the historical trauma that we've all had, that was about dominance and control. And so we've now translated that. And so that's what we understand. You always give what you have, what you're familiar with, right? And so we have now come to a place where we're trying to dominate and control each other. And, we have men who are fearful of actualized women, right? And if I don't control and dominate her, that conversation you were having about money, it blows my mind how often, and let me tell you, I could tell you some stories about men who would rather stay impoverished than have their wife bring more money into the house. Literally, I've seen this back, because I do a lot of training. I did a training in Nigeria once, and there was a young woman who got a massive promotion. But because her husband was terrified that she would earn so much more than him, he sabotaged the whole experience, and they were impoverished. It wasn't like they had more than enough. They didn't have enough. This would have changed the game for their children. But he was so fragile and so afraid. And this is that piece of not knowing yourself, not, being in wounded masculine, right? not being that strong, stable, like he didn't have the fullness of himself to be able to hold space. Because a man who really knows who he is, a man who is strong, really strong, can hold space.
Right.
Knows that it's not threatened. But again, because if you don't know, you're trying to dominate. Fear tries to dominate. Love is expansive. Fear is contraction, right? And so it tries to hold tight and dominate. So I think that we have a lot of fear in our relationships. We have a lot of fear within us, and we have not spoken out our fear. So because we don't speak it out, it controls us. But if we start to speak it out, if we start to say, instead of, I don't need a man, but I am afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of trusting a man because I've been hurt before, you know? And if men start to say the same thing too, I'm afraid of trusting you. I think there are a lot of men that are sexually attracted to women, but are deeply fearful of women, don't trust them. So they would rather put their trust and their love with their boys and sleep with women. And there are women that are the same. They would rather trust their girls. I trust my women, I trust my girls, but I'm attracted to men. So you have relationships that are not full relationships. They're only half relationships.
You know what? Do you have a church or something that you
No, I do not have a church.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, that last sentence that you just said about a lot of men being sexually attractive or attracted to women, but deeply like have this deep rooted lack of trust in women. That is what we are seeing. That is what I am seeing on the page. I post about women and it's like, man, why are you posting about these women? Projection, right? Because mom wasn't at home, or girlfriend cheated, or girl embarrassed me when I was in school. You know what I'm saying? And so now it's all women are this way.
That's right.
I'm attracted to women. I want to know more about them, but the more I learn, the more it tugs at the trauma that I experienced.
The wound, yeah.
Right. And I don't want to deal with that wound. So I'd rather make it seem like the person or the entire demographic is wrong.
That's right. That's right.
And I try to tell men, man, you got to look within. You have to look within.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that's what frees you.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing for women too. There are a lot of women who are deeply bitter. I mean, I've had my share of heartbreak. I have. But one of the things I was very clear on is I didn't want to live a broken life. I didn't want to live an unhappy life. And it wasn't about finding the right man. It was about becoming the right woman. That's where that work really began, doing that inner work and really unpacking and saying, okay, and even the process of forgiveness and even forgiving myself and really getting clear. It's that inner work, that healing. And, you know, I have women who, when they do that work, it's incredible the letters they write. One woman, you know, she had been divorced for years and hadn't been able to really get into another relationship because she didn't realize how much deep bitterness and bitterness doesn't always show up in, you know, I hate all men. Sometimes it's, you know, just very withdrawn, that deep mistrust, right. You know, and then, but when she unpacked it, do you know that she met the love of her life like within a month?
And, you know, people don't believe that these things happen.
Yeah.
They don't. People do not believe that when you start working on yourself, the universe starts making adjustments to the course that you take. The whole, like, I just want to get this out before you say what you're gonna say, because I know you're gonna say some gems. People see the page, right? Mm-hmm. They see 50,000 followers, they see the YouTube, they see the podcast, they see all of this success, right? That looks on the surface level like, oh wow, this guy has it all put together. For years, I was talking about mental health. 2017, I was talking about mental health. 2018, I was talking about mental health. 2019, I was talking about mental health. You know what I wasn't doing? I wasn't doing the inner work to actually heal. I was telling everybody else, hey, this is mental health. I was depressed, blah, 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 but I never actually went to therapy. There is no coincidence that the first year I get into therapy, the page starts taking off. You get what I'm saying? Relationships start flourishing. Not only romantic relationships, but platonic relationships as well. I'm getting
Mm.
promotions at work. I'm getting new jobs. All of these things are working in my favor because I am doing the work on myself to make sure that I'm showing up the right way. But when I tell people heal, all they hear is, oh, I got to bring up all this trauma and that's too much work. I'm like, bro, do you understand? Healing is not just about your mental health. It's not even about your partner or your relationship or your generation, your family and generational healing. Healing is so much more important than just those surface level things. It puts you in line with the vibration of the things that you want.
Yes.
Everybody's
Yes.
like, I want
Yes.
this, I want this, I want that, I want it. But you're operating at a lower frequency because you have all of this trauma that you haven't unpacked.
Right. That's right. So true. Oh my God, so true. You know, there's a great quote that says, we cannot continue to try to answer the heavy calling on our lives before our character is strong enough to carry it. There are times when, you know, God won't, that out of mercy, holds certain things back, because if you haven't done the healing, it's like you can't carry a heavy load if your shoulders are broke, like, you know, it'll crush you.
Right.
So that healing, that abundance that comes upon you when you've done your healing, whether it's love or followers or impact or influence or whatever it is because you have expanded enough to receive it. You didn't have the room to receive it before, you know, and so many of us, we don't understand that. And we love knowledge, right? It's great to have knowledge, that cognitive intelligence. You love knowledge, but knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. So a lot of us like knowledge because we can retweet it, we can repost it, we can get a lot of likes, we can get a lot of external validation on how smart we are, but we're not living out the knowledge. That's wisdom. When you can apply it to your life and there's change, that's the wisdom. And so a lot of us are not ready to do that work to get into the wisdom, you know. And I love what you said about everything responds to it. You know, this is the way I put it. It's like when, you know, you're going around and you've been to New York. Have you been to New York? You know, the yellow taxi.
I live in New
Oh,
York.
you live in New York. Okay, the infamous yellow taxis.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you are trying to flag down a taxi, what do you look for?
I'm looking at the driver.
You're looking at the driver. What else are you looking for on top of the taxi? It's in
You know,
service.
I haven't flagged down a yellow. I'm
It's
always
been a while. We're in an Uber age now.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my time. The light, you look to see whether the light is
They
on.
have a they have a
Yes, if
passenger
it's
or not.
in service or out of service.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yes. So a lot of us, you're driving around with all your capacity, all your gifts, all your beauty. If you're a woman, and you're like, why? I'm ready for love. I'm ready for the opportunity. I'm ready for the next level. I'm ready for the contract. I'm ready for prime time. Why? Because you're the taxi. The car is ready. You have all the capacity, but because your inner self isn't ready, your light is off. And so you're driving the same streets. You're everywhere, but nothing is happening. But the minute you do the work, your light turns on and the right person can flag you down because they've been looking for you, but they can't see you because your light is off.
You know what's so interesting about that? You talked about us wanting to receive these blessings, but God being merciful enough to not give them to us when we're not ready, right? Because that's the way I see it. And it really reminds me, I wish, man, my girl would tell you, there are so many times when I was on the page in the past where I would post something, somebody would comment a certain thing, and it would really drive me nuts. Right? And I wouldn't respond a certain way because I'm doing the work, right? So instead of responding with my trigger or my projection or insulting the person or whatever the case may be, I pause, I take my time to go through it, I talk to my girl about it, and then I move on. If I was operating the same way I was operating in 2017, and I had all these blessings, I'm getting all these comments and all these different things, and I'm projecting in comments, you think I would have the platform that I have now? People reading comments with me insulting people when I have a mental health platform, right? Because of their opinion or whatever the case may be. So I like, it really just reminds me, and even if we take it further than that, like me being able to understand there are times where I need to take a break.
Yes.
I don't have to post every single day, 3 times a day.
That's right.
Sometimes I need to take a break for myself, right? So like, I have the tools now to be able to deal with the blessings. And I think people only think about blessings in just one facet, which is, oh, I'm getting a blessing. There's all these great things that come with it, but everything has its pros and its cons, right? So are you prepared for the cons of your blessing? And I think a lot of that, what we're talking about is your healing gets you on the right vibration to get your blessing. But also on the flip side of that, it also prepares you for the stress and the cons that come with it. So that you can be able to sustain it and reach other levels.
Spot on.
Man.
Well said, Black man. Well said.
Thank you so much. Listen, this has been a dope episode. Please tell the people where they can find you, how they can support, all of that great stuff, please.
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at Iconic Womanhood _coach. So we have a community page, but my page is _coach, Iconic Womanhood _coach. I actually have a podcast, Iconic Womanhood with Ekene. So I'd love for you to come check it out. And of course, we have 2 programs. I have a course. If anything that I've said has been very resonant for you and you're a woman who really wants to start doing that inner work, the best place to start is the Iconic Womanhood course. I have a mastermind, which is for that woman who is ready to rise into leadership and do some professional development. And we both do the womanhood work there, but we really focus on leading with your feminine so that you can be successful, but not be soulless. So those are the things. And you find out about that on iconicwomanhood.com.
Ekene, thank you so much. I appreciate all the wisdom that you have dropped. I really, really hope this helps someone, and I know it will.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure, and you are just a joy. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yo, I'm excited, man. We're currently building the exclusive community, and it's going to have so many dope features. We're partnering with a Black organization to offer low-cost therapy to each member of the exclusive community. And when I say low cost, I mean that members will be able to get therapy sessions for less than $50, regardless of who they are and where they are. We're also going to have free ebooks and courses, including both the Hurting the Healing ebook and the therapy ebook I'm currently writing, live podcast episodes where you'll be able to interact with the guest and I in real time, community forums, exclusive merch, and categorized content so you can easily find information that may be useful to you. So go to expressyourselfblackman.com/therapy and register for early access. It's literally a 30-second process. I just need your name, email, and social media handle to make sure you get access before anyone else. And before I dip, I just want to thank you for your support. Without people like you, none of this would be possible. I can't wait to see you when we launch.
Sometimes I know you feel like you ain't got nobody to speak to. A shoulder to lean on somebody you could preach to. No, you need to hear it, my brother, I love you. We got way too much to live for.